Hello from the Channel studio in London and welcome to another edition of Foreign Dispatches, the programme that takes you around the world. I'm Tenyola Uyitayo. On the programme this week, Israeli forces withdraw from Gaza's second largest city, Khan Yunis, after months of fighting. Plus, nearly a year since the start of the Sudanese war, healthcare system under immense strain as patients battle for treatment. Palestinians forced from their homes in Khan Yunis by Israel's military offensive have begun returning in small numbers to the southern Gaza city following the withdrawal of Israeli forces. Nearly 400,000 people lived in the city before October the 7th, but much of the area is now in ruins after months of Israeli bombardment and heavy fighting. This is what the southern city of Khan Yunis looks like a day after Israel's unexpected withdrawal of its forces. Thousands of Palestinians, exhausted by 6 months of unrelenting war and multiple displacements, trudged back to the devastated city, with many making the journey on foot from nearby Rafah. With about 55% of buildings in the city destroyed or damaged, for many returning to their neighborhoods in Gaza's second largest city, the experience was emotionally shattering.
We heard in the news that the Israeli army withdrew, so we wanted to get to our house to find out whether we could return or not, and to get some belongings from our house. Unfortunately, we couldn't recognize our homes or our neighborhoods. All our homes have been demolished. It's very sad.
The withdrawal of the Israeli army is an unbelievable occurrence, but there is absolute destruction here. There are no houses, dwellings, lands, or anything left here. As you can see, this is the situation.
Israel's sudden retreat from the city and the wider south has confounded many. After months in which, officials said, the military's presence there was designed to put pressure on Hamas to release Israeli hostages. According to the Israeli Defense Minister, troops had left Khan Yunis to prepare for future missions, including an offensive in Rafah, where an estimated 1.4 million people are taking shelter. The planned group operation in Rafah is opposed by Israel's Western allies, who are pressing Israel to negotiate a deal for a ceasefire amid concerns over potential civilian casualties due to the intrusion.
We have made clear to Israel that we think a full-scale military invasion of Rafah would have an enormously harmful effect on those civilians and that it would ultimately hurt Israel's security. So it's not just a question of Israel presenting a plan to us. We have made clear to them that we think that there is a better way to achieve what is a legitimate goal, which is to degrade and dismantle and defeat the Hamas battalions that still remain in Rafah. We don't think a full-scale operation in Rafah is something that we could support in any event, because we think it would, number one, harm all the more than 1.4 million Palestinians.
Aid agencies have warned of famine and a humanitarian catastrophe if Israel goes ahead with its planned offensive.
I think that what we face right now is a situation where it's very unstable and very hostile military activity there. Many millions of people are suffering. Everybody in the Gaza Strip needs some sort of support from us. And right now, we're just basically living in a hand-to-mouth existence. We're barely been able to deal with the issues we have facing us. We've only got a short pipeline, we've only got a small stock, and we've got a massive need. And of course, this doesn't include the north, which is even more harrowing in terms of its humanitarian need. Until we can address that, we're in no position to be able to say we can put aside stocks, as you would do in other emergencies, other disasters. You would have pre-positioned stocks, you'd have contingency planning stocks. We have none of that in this situation. And yet the planning is underway for a Rafah incursion, which could move up to 800,000 people.
Hamas, the militant group that seized control of Gaza in 2007, triggered the bloodiest war in the decades-old Israel-Palestinian conflict with an unprecedented cross-border attack on the 7th of October, in which they killed about 1,200 people, mostly civilians, and abducted another 250, according to official Israeli tallies. Israel's retaliatory offensive has reportedly killed more than 33,000 people and driven almost all of the 2.3 million population from their homes.
Over 33,000 Palestinians, mostly women and children, are dead. 75,000 or more are injured. And at least 7,000 are presumed dead under the rubble.
Children and women comprise the overwhelming majority of those killed in the war, with Save the Children saying more than 13,800 children have been killed.
More children have been killed in this conflict than have been killed in all armed conflicts globally every year over the past 4 years. And children are not small adults. They have a special status in conflict, specific vulnerabilities and an additional set of rights afforded to them and distinct obligations owed to them. They must be protected. Yet, children have been taken hostage. Thousands of children have been maimed, their limbs ripped from them by explosive weapons, mutilated by bullets, burned, crushed, or struck down by preventable disease. Inevitably, after months of systemic and deliberate denial of humanitarian access, children are now dying from malnutrition and dehydration in Gaza. Denied food and water, by an illegal blockade, they have been starved to death.
Some 196 humanitarian aid workers, including more than 175 members of UN staff, have also been killed. Many charities have described Gaza as one of the most dangerous places for them to operate, with fighting making it virtually impossible for help to reach those who need it the most. The deaths of aid workers has contributed to growing international pressure over how Israel is conducting the war, which has led to calls for countries to stop supplying Israel with weapons in recent days. Meanwhile, as over 100 hostages and their loved ones mark 6 months since they were taken captive by a mass terrorist on October the 7th, some of the families have changed their tone, adopting an anti-government stance that reflects their immense anger, sadness and disappointment in the Israeli government. Tens of thousands of demonstrators have flooded Israel's streets in recent days, calling for immediate elections and for the government to urgently negotiate the release of the hostages.
Inside Israel, frustration with the government's handling of the war is rising. At a huge rally in Jerusalem, protesters were seen calling for peace, saying that the only way to achieve it is to stop the war.
This is my cousin who was kidnapped 6 months ago. And we are all feeling so emotional about it. We'll give everything, I think, for peace, especially peace for us with the Palestinians. I feel that we must do that and return everyone. All of the captives will return to their homes, and all the dead will return to their families. It can be buried here in Israel.
We are all suffering together with our brothers and sisters, families, and we want them back as soon as possible. We don't see any will from Hamas party. We don't get any information. We don't know if these people are alive or dead. There's a sense of urgency, and we are being blackmailed by this group of criminals, and we just want these people to come back as soon as possible.
We need to bring back the hostages, and the only way, this is my opinion and the opinion of many, is to stop this bloody war and stop killing everybody, including our own hostages.
Many Israelis have also accused the Prime Minister of not doing enough, demanding his resignation.
I'm feeling that I was neglected by the government of Israel. My people are held hostage for over 6 months, slaughtered and murdered. The government is not doing enough to finish the situation. We will never end terror, never. So we must come to an agreement.
For many political reasons, I can count them all right now, but it's a long list.
Only one?
Only one, Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister. Really, he wants to stay in his seat, and he's doing everything to make that happen, including sacrificing his citizens who did nothing wrong.
I try to be as optimistic as I can, but there's been several attempts of a deal with Hamas that have failed up to this point, and our optimism is growing thin. We believe that this government can't make a deal with Hamas, and we think that a different government should deserve a shot to at least try.
I don't really agree with this government, although they were chosen. But after the crisis that we had, I think they have failed us in every possible way. I don't really trust them at this moment that they're doing the best for the behalf of our people. So I really wish for them to be honest and to give the mandate back to the people, so we will choose again. And if they will be chosen again, they will be chosen again. But at least the question of the hostages will be back on the table up front.
The protest came a day after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed that there would be no truce until all hostages were released, declaring that the country is one step away from victory. Supporters of Israeli hostages held by Hamas in Gaza also gathered in solidarity around the world to mark 6 months since the attack and demand their release.
For me, it's very important to remember that these people are still gone. And it's like we had Christmas, we had Easter, and we are still waiting for them to come home. And I think this is a very cruel action, not even know what happened to them.
I lived in Sderot and I lived in this area, and it was a very traumatic experience for all of us and all of the Israelis and Jewish people. And I'm here to remember the people, who really were victims of a real act of genocide, and to remember it, because if Hamas did it like they wanted to do it every day, there will be no Jews left by now in Israel.
It is believed that 129 hostages are still being held in Gaza, of the 253 abducted on October the 7th, when thousands of Hamas-led terrorists burst across the border into Israel, killing around 1,200 people. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres marked 6 months since the attack with a condemnation and call for an unconditional release of all the hostages, but also repeated his call for a ceasefire.
The 7th of October is a day of pain for Israel and the world. The United Nations and I personally mourn with Israelis for the 1,200 people, including many women and children, who were killed in cold blood. Nothing can justify the horror unleashed by Hamas in October 7th. And I once again utterly condemn the use of sexual violence, torture, injuring and kidnapping of civilians, the firing of rockets towards civilian targets, and the use of human shields. And I call for the unconditional release of all the hostages still held by Hamas and other armed groups. Until then, they must be treated humanely, with visits and assistance from the International Committee of the Red Cross.
Meanwhile, the UN Palestinian Refugee Agency, which is the main UN agency in Gaza, has said it urgently needs more access to the besieged enclave. The agency says it has delivered more than 10 million food units and 24 million litres of water to Palestinians in the enclave since the war began, but this has not been enough to meet the needs of the population. Israeli officials say they have increased aid access to Gaza, but that they are not responsible for delays. They say shortages are a result of logistics failures by humanitarian organisations, Hamas diverting supplies.
When Foreign Dispatches returns in just a moment, we hear about the boat-shaped mosque drawing people to Pakistan's largest city, Karachi. Please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us on the programme. Nearly a year of war has pushed Sudan's health system to breaking point, with patients in hospitals battling for treatment. While many health facilities have come under attack and are no longer functioning, others are critically short of staff, medicines and equipment, putting the lives of many at risk.
At the East Oncology Center in Al-Qadarif, officials say the facility is suffering from overcrowding following the outbreak of the war. Although cancer patients are undergoing treatment in the hospital, many report issues with both capacity and availability of procedures during the ongoing conflict.
After the outbreak of war in Khartoum, the center began to suffer from overcrowding of patients and increased frequency of admissions. Before the war, we received 30 to 35 patients a month. After the war, the number doubled, and after the beginning of the civil war, it increased many times over.
Dr. Kisember adds that the number of days dedicated to chemotherapy had been increased from 2 to 5 a week, as well as a small staff pool working additional shifts. Ishan Mohammed Suleiman, displaced patient from Darfur, said her treatment had been interrupted many times by the fighting.
I started chemotherapy in Khartoum. After 3 doses, the war broke out. Then I was displaced to Shendi and completed my treatment there. I had a second operation. After 2 months, I felt pain again. So I went to Madani. After suffering for 8 days on the road, I underwent tests and began treatment.
Over in Omdurman, a sister city of the capital Khartoum, the sole healthcare facility, the Al Rumi Medical Center, finally reopened after being closed in April 2023, amidst fighting between the Sudan Armed Forces and militants of the Rapid Support Forces.
May God fix the country and end this war. The center includes all medical specialties in the field of treatment and an external pharmacy. And with God's help and success, we treat all patients.
Footage shows the inside of the center, where citizens line up at the reception desks, waiting to get their medical checkups in the main hall, while doctors carry out their work in the laboratory and conduct examinations for their patients.
Al Rumi Medical Center provides integrated medical services in all specialties and rare specialties. We have a heart consultant, a kidney consultant, an ophthalmology department, and a dental department. We used to work in the morning shift, but now we work in the evening shifts as well.
Fighting continues between Sudan's armed forces and militants of the Rapid Support Forces. Up to 15,000 people have been killed according to UN sources, with over 8 million displaced.
Over to South Africa now, where the country's unemployment rate remains among the highest in the world. According to Statistics South Africa, in the first quarter of 2024, 21,000 jobs were lost. Meanwhile, some entrepreneurs in Johannesburg believe the township economy has the potential to reduce the country's high unemployment rate. Our South Africa correspondent, Innocent Samosa, reports.
39-year-old Msizi Gumbi has been running a mobile kitchen for the past 5 years. He firmly believes in the potential of the township economy to alleviate the country's high unemployment rate.
Certainly it does. It's only that most entrepreneurs in the township have valued themselves and thought of themselves being small and medium enterprises. But nobody wants to be small. As small as I am today, I don't wish to continue to be small. So we can create employment, we can create opportunities for joint ventures, partnerships.
With half of South Africa's population living in the estimated 532 townships around the country, businesswoman Lesego Sanelo says vast potential lies in the so-called township economy.
Let's come together, but understanding that the solutions reside within us, and we ourselves are the indunas, are the lokotlas, because that's what it is. And often we think because it's this eloquent English, it actually isn't what happens within our communities, whereas in fact, the systems mirror each other. The only difference is that the one is regulated and the other is self-regulated. Why don't we industrialize our very own communities? Who says it's not possible? The capital resides within our own communities. So it's about shifting the paradigm in saying it's not as bad as we think, because actually the solutions reside within us as a people.
According to Lesego, South Africa's efforts to develop townships face many challenges.
The gap resides in implementation. We're very good at formulating policies that are among the world's renowned. We're not so good at executing.
Entrepreneur Lerato Sanelo encourages fellow entrepreneurs to persist and persevere.
So anyone in the township, the start for me is believe in your business, believe in yourself. And once that is the foundation, everything else can sort of start to fall into place. And another thing that I realized, once that happens, you start to draw the right people. And we need to stop looking at the solutions from the people that are way up there,
In a country with an unemployment rate of over 32%, some believe that the informal sector is a lifeline to countless families who lack formal employment. Meanwhile, Msizi's aspiration to franchise his business continues.
And finally on the program, as Muslims around the world celebrate the end of Ramadan, we head over to Pakistan to hear about one of the most unique mosques in the world. Take a look. From afar, it looks like a giant boat anchored in the middle of a busy road in Pakistan's southern port city of Karachi. But once you move closer and two large minarets and a green-coloured dome appear in sight, it becomes clear that this is a mosque. This is the historic Kuchi Jama Masjid in Karachi's Dobbi Ghat area. It has become a popular landmark and beloved space for worshippers to visit for prayers and community.
It seems as if a ship is coming out of the ocean and is standing here in the Dobbi Ghat. This mosque is beautiful from outside and equally stunning from inside. People are coming from far away to see this wonder.
The ship-shaped mosque traces its origin to some 130 years ago, when British forces mobilized Muslim laborers to fortify the banks of the Liari River. The workers erected a makeshift mosque on the side. Decades later, when members of the Kuchi Memon community migrated to Karachi in the 1920s, they constructed a concrete mosque in the same place with 4 minarets. Since then, the building has been demolished and reconstructed multiple times due to road building and expansion works, as well as development projects in the area. In 2005, to save the mosque from future demolitions, the Kuchi community came up with the idea of turning the mosque into a landmark, a space that was a mosque but also had cultural and tourist value.
This mosque was renovated in 2004 or 2005. After that, it became famous with the name the Sheep Mosque. All the funds received at this time was put on its renovation. It has capacity of almost 1,000 people that can pray inside this mosque.
This mosque was designed like a ship. That's why it's called the ship mosque. Lots of people pray inside this mosque. This is an ancient structure dating back to the time of British rule.
The boat design came from Abdul Qadir, an architect, and the mosque was built over 7 years. In its present form, it has 3 floors and can accommodate up to 1,000 worshippers. And that's the program today, but remember our top stories are never far away. You can catch them on channelstv.com. Thank you for watching. I'm Tenyola Oyetayo. Bye for now.